It's my favorite time of the year. It's draft time. David. It's my draft song.
You love a good draft, man. I got to give it to you. It really gets.
I don't study for it. I don't study enough for it. I don't know enough about it. That's why we call in the experts, and that's what we're going to do on today's show. We're calling in the experts because I got to cram, David. I don't know enough about it. I don't know really.
You got some time. When are they doing the draft this year anyway? Around Thanksgiving?
I actually know this because
October.
I'm helping put on Locked On's, the Locked On Podcast Network's live coverage. It's happening on July 29th.
Oh, my God. All right, so the 29th. Let's plan this out a little bit. This year I'm excited, Doug, because the finals are actually happening like the week of the 4th, which is also the week of my birthday, and I've never had like a finals game potentially, on
the week
birthday
of our
night.
birthday. We share a birthday. Little known fact going back to the days of Hive Talk Live and Locked On Hornets, and now you and I.
That's how we started.
We share a close birthday. It's not the same day, but it's close.
This was the first birthday pod, I think. No one talks birthdays like we do.
All right, let's do it. This is not a Serious Hornets podcast. I'm Doug Branson. I'm joined by my friend David Walker, and we are talking about the NBA draft on this episode. Next week, we'll get into a little bit of free agency talk, but we're going to stick with the NBA draft for this one. The Hornets right now slotted for the 11th pick, but we've got the draft lottery in about 13 days. We'll see if the Hornets get a little lucky. If you don't know, this podcast is supported by you, the listener. We don't have ads because we don't like ads on our podcast. So if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/HornetsPod and sign up to help us keep doing these podcasts each week that we do on YouTube and on the audio podcast form. So you can check us out, see what we look like, see what our guest looks like today. That's right, we have a guest, and it's not just somebody who's our friend that has to come on because they're our friend. They have graced us with their presence and their knowledge. Richard Stayman from MavsDraft.com and from the Locked On NBA Draft podcast. Richard, what's going on?
Not too much. Found out recently that I look like a certain Hornets player, so I'm just celebrating that over here.
You've known that. You've known that before.
No Hornets fan has ever told me this, though. So this is
That's right. If you're watching on YouTube, you know this. But if you're not watching on YouTube, Richard is a dead ringer for Cody Zeller. I mean, it is uncanny, the resemblance. Richard, you could go to a Zeller family reunion and eat whatever you want. We should arrange this. In fact, we should figure out when. We got to figure out when the next Zeller family reunion is and try to sneak Richard in and report live.
It's probably pretty soon. Thinking, the pandemic being close to an end and everything like that.
They got to do it in the off season. You figure every year.
Well, what's devastating is that we find this out with Cody Zeller on the verge of leaving the franchise. I wish we had known this. We could have had some fun if we had known this many years ago. But I don't live with any regret. I live in the present, and the present right now is talking about what the Hornets are going to do in this NBA draft. It's tough to talk about before the draft lottery, but we're going to do it anyway. Richard, the first thing that I want to know from you, you're a draft expert. You're on every week on the Locked On NBA Draft podcast, fantastic podcast. You write for your own site, MavsDraft.com. You are fully ensconced in the NBA draft. I want to know the answer to a very simple question. Is this going to be a good draft?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at last year's draft, where there was no certain number one pick. It was a bunch of like number 8 picks going in the lottery. It's a really nice draft. There's a lot of superstar power. There's a lot of star power, and then there's just good role players at the bottom as well.
Nice. And yet, Richard, there were some players out of last year's draft that, peaked, especially at the top. Obviously, we liked Melo and like him even more now. But, a guy that I wasn't or was questionable almost, Anthony Edwards, and like he improved as the season went on. So even in a supposed down draft, there were still a lot of talent. I felt like, and maybe a lot of players that will stick around from last year's draft. I know we're talking next year's, but even last year's was proved to be pretty good.
Yeah, and there were a lot of surprises. I mean, even Patrick Williams at the top was like right after Charlotte, turning out to be a pretty good pick. He was one of those guys where I think anybody who watched a lot of him kind of figured out that he was just waiting to be unlocked. But I don't know. It's just like there's no superstar power outside of probably LaMelo Ball. He's probably the one guy who, congratulations.
We were due.
Outside of him, like there's really no superstars or guys that you're going to be putting in your top 10 under 25 players from that class.
Right. Yeah.
We were due. That's right, David. We were due. We've paid our dues. We've suffered many draft just horror shows. So we definitely were due for LaMelo Ball at 3. How does this thing tier out, Richard? I'm just cheating off of your paper. I want you to know that. You are the person. I was the guy in school that had to look over a couple of desks to find out the answers, and I still got them wrong. But that's what you are. You're the person that can come in. I want to cheat off your paper. I need to know, like, where does this thing tier out? Like, how many tiers are in this draft? They always talk about draft tiers.
Yeah, so personally, I'm not huge on draft tiers except for like the top 20. But it starts at the top. There's one tier of one player, which is Cade Cunningham's in a class of his own. He's a lock to go number 1. After that, it's 2 through probably Evan Mobley's close to being on his own tier at number 2. But if he's not, it's 2 through 7. 6 probably actually is one tier, and then 7 to honestly like 25. I can make the argument that everyone is in one tier, and there's some where like you prioritize some over the others, but for the most part, it's like the first round is pretty similar after the top 5. The top 5 is where all that superstar power is, but after that, there's still a lot of plays for upside.
So you're telling me if the Hornets jump into the top 4, if they get lucky again, if they find Lady Luck once more, they're going to get a good player somewhere in the top 4, even if they don't get Cade or. Is Evan Mobley a lock at 2?
He's close. It depends on the team. I struggle to say he is, because what if a team like New Orleans gets to number 2? Do they really need him? Even though like he's the best talent at number 2, they might feel uncomfortable with Zion. They have Steven Adams locked up, but Ingram's there. They already have a lot of guys who can overlap what Evan Mobley does well.
And I should point out the Hornets are in line for the 11th pick, guys. 2 years ago, the Lakers did jump up from 11th into that top 4, and then I think last year the Spurs stayed smack dab in the 11th pick. So we'll see what happens in this newfangled, lottery system. But Richard, jump back to those guys real quick. When I was watching the NCAA tournament this year, that was my question: is there a surefire guy, like a franchise type guy, and you think that really the only guy is probably Cade Cunningham up top?
So I think he's the only like lock to be that franchise changing guy. I do think there's a lot of plays that could be other franchise changing guys. There's a lot of all-star caliber players, but he's the guy who I see as year in, year out, he's going to be an all-star. His floor is pretty much a starter. He's the only person who has that combination of like insanely high floor and insanely high ceiling.
Now, I know our friend Walker Mail on, I think it was either the last mock draft or a mock draft before that, because Locked On, they're doing mock drafts all over the place. It's a great, and that's why I love it, because I love mock drafts. I feel like I started that on Locked On. Like my love of mock draft, I was just all over it.
You started mock drafts?
Oh yeah, I started. God. Yes, I started mock draft. A lot of people don't know that about me, but that is something that I did. So in the latest mock draft that the Locked On Hornets podcast did, they took Josh Giddey, point guard from Australia, with I think they were slotted at the 11th or the 12th pick. They may have moved down. But what do you feel? How do you feel about that? How do you feel that Walker did? And talk as bad about him as you want to, because he's not here and he can't defend himself.
Okay, perfect. I'll just go right at him. No, I'm not huge on Giddey myself. He's like the trendy guy who's rising right now. 11's pretty fine for him. I don't really have any qualms with it. I personally would take other guys over him, just because I don't really buy Giddey's jump shot. He does the splits, it almost looks like, whenever he's doing a pull-up jump shot. Yeah, the base is rough. But everybody's looking, for that new age Luka Doncic, and the closest one is Cade Cunningham. But Josh Giddey has probably the best vision and best passing ability that resembles Luka Doncic. So there is that. I personally don't know how you can, if Devontae Graham comes back, I don't know how you can squeeze, and this is just a short-sighted assessment, but I don't know how you can squeeze Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, LaMelo Ball, and Giddey, especially Giddey and Ball. They're very similar players. They have the same flaws, same strengths. I don't know how well that would work together.
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of a logjam there, and I'm still of the belief that the Hornets, even though they made a little jump and added some guys last year, they probably need to take best available. I mean, I think if they're sitting in that spot, but yeah, that would be interesting to see how they shoehorned all those guys in there. I think the biggest hole and the biggest need for this Hornets team is a big guy, is somebody who can hold down the paint and maybe give them some offensive options down there too. But I'm scanning these mock drafts, Richard, and the only guy I'm seeing is like Mobley, I think, up top. And if they miss out on him, it looks like there's a pretty steep drop off to the next available like impact center guy.
A dearth of centers.
Yeah, it's not a strong big man class, but the good news is there's still two other lottery level guys. There's Usman Garuba from Spain, who might be. He's in the discussion for best defender in the class, and he's kind of like Cody Zeller, honestly.
Oh boy,
a lot better. Like
okay.
a lot more. Like, how do I word it? He's like a blend of like if you mix Cody Zeller and Draymond, right? But made it a little bit closer to Cody Zeller. That's kind of how I would describe him, especially on the defensive end, because he can kind of shoot 1 or 3. Can pass really well, not nearly as well as Draymond, but like he passes like Cody Zeller does. He moves the ball well, doesn't do anything crazy advanced, but he can pass out a pick and roll. He's good. His jump shot's weird. That's probably his biggest flaw, but defensively he's a monster. And then you could also go to Kai Jones. He's probably one of the highest boomer bust guys in the class. Sophomore who he can hit jab step threes. He can defend any position. Like, he's insanely athletic. I saw him in person a year ago as a freshman at TCU, and he was crazy raw and one of the best athletes I've ever seen in my life in person.
I feel like every year I fall in love with a center from Texas. Like, I was big on Jackson Hayes, and now you have Kai Jones here, and what you just told me, I'm now falling in love with him.
Yeah, he's like the Jaren Jackson mold of this class.
Okay.
Where do they keep finding these guys, Texas? Because the NBA comparison here on NBADraft.net is Jackson Hayes. So they just had a Jackson Hayes ready to go when Jackson Hayes left.
Oh God, that's a terrible comparison.
Well, then they're idiots. That's why we have the expert on our show. Get this trash website out of here.
Well, if there's any indication of what the Hornets will do, it's probably draft a young Kentucky player, and there is a young Kentucky center out there, Isaiah Jackson, kind of in the middle of that first round. Is that kind of where you see him landing, or have you watched him much? Isaiah Jackson out of Kentucky.
Yeah, Kentucky is actually the last game I just saw. So he is really raw, kind of in that boomer bust mold. I think he's probably a little bit less bust, but just how much boom in the middle of that. So he's crazy athletic, can kind of be like Kai Jones, where he can probably shoot. He just started playing basketball, I think, within the last 5 years. So still pretty new. So yeah, it's the raw upside. Really good defender, crazy athletic though. And I mean, he can play help defense. He can play man to man. He can guard pretty much anyone as well.
I love those stories of people who just started playing basketball, 3 years ago, and now they're an NBA draft.
Now they're in the draft.
Well, listen, it gives hope to all of us that we could just pick up a hobby and all of a sudden be, crazy
like
great.
Podcasting or something.
Yeah, exactly. We just started podcasting 10 years ago, so we're just like right on the cusp of being great, I think. All right, so Richard, by the way, one of the hosts of Locked On NBA Draft podcast, go check that out, or he writes for MavsDraft.com. So one of the other things that I think the Hornets really need, and I'd be interested to hear some names from you in that kind of soft lottery, possibly trade back scenario, is a guard that can guard. Because you pointed it out earlier, the problem that the Hornets have is that they are wealthy in terms of offensive guards. We've seen some defensive promise out of LaMelo Ball, but he's got some technique stuff that he's got to work out over the next few years. I don't think that Terry Rozier or Devontae Graham are an answer at the other guard position if you want some defense. And we've seen with the Trailblazers, you throw two offensive guards in there, and there is a cap to where you can go. You've got to have somebody that can lock down on the defensive end to pair with your superstar. So is there a player that you look at in this draft and say, yeah, that's somebody who can play the guard position, maybe slot down to the small forward position, and can just lock you down? Might not be great offensively, but can really be a primary defender.
Yeah, so this is such a hard question because there's two guys that come to mind, really three. One of them is a de facto guard. Like, I don't even know how to classify him. I think he's a positionless player, honestly. And that's Scotty Barnes, who he played point guard. He's 6'9". So, like, I don't really know how to classify him, but he could guard anybody, can get to the rim, but can't shoot. So it's a really weird problem to have as a guard. But with that size, does it overcome the lack of shooting? And then there's Davion Mitchell, who I don't know how much his offense translates from Baylor. I think he had a pretty good system set up for him, and some of the numbers are a little bit alarming in the past, but he can lock anybody up. He's probably the best on-ball defender in the class. And then if you want to take a chance, this guy's boomer mediocre, I guess, like crazy high ceiling, but he can lock anybody up, and that's Keon Johnson out of Tennessee. And the jump shot may come along, may not. But those are three guys that their defense first.
And they're right around that 11 pick. So if they get slotted at 11, those Davion Mitchell and Keon Johnson, both possibilities. Okay. I've got some Tankathon draft lottery simulations for the Hornets that I'd like to run you through. And I'm going to put you in the Hornets war room. These are the scenarios. I've got to share my...
You're right next to MJ.
That's right.
You've got your own glass of tequila.
Oh God!
And your own iPad.
Yeah, I don't know if you can handle this, but
yeah, I can't handle it, man. I can't even be next.
He might actually think you are Cody Zeller if he looks over to his right.
He's like, I thought we traded you. What happened? We tried. Okay, so in this scenario, the Hornets do get lucky, but they get the least kind of lucky. They do slot into the fourth position. They jump up 7 spots. They have an 8.5% chance of doing this, by the way. And so Chicago also gets super lucky. They jump into the first position. Houston drops down to 1 position to 2. Minnesota jumps up 3 spots. Charlotte at 4. What are they doing? What are we going to do at 4? Chicago, Houston, Minnesota, then Charlotte.
Yeah, so I think Chicago, Cade Cunningham. Houston, Evan Mobley, it's pretty safe. And then I would say Jalen, oh God, I thought I had a clearer answer for this. Probably Jalen Green at Minnesota. So that leaves, I think you take one of probably, I think it's one of 3 guys. It's either Jalen Suggs, you could go, Jonathan Kuminga with the forward. And if you really want to go outside of that top 5, you could maybe go with Scotty Barnes, that 6'9" guard I was talking about just a minute ago. I say probably go Kuminga personally. I don't know how confident I am with another combo guard. Just maybe that's too short-sighted, but Jalen Suggs, he could be, he's going to be good. His floor is probably the highest pure floor in the draft. But it's like, do you really want to take another guard, or do you want to take someone who can probably do long-term upside plus immediate team need? And I'd personally go Kuminga in this scenario. I think he's got crazy upside, ridiculously athletic, high defensive upside, and I think the jump shot comes along. That's far and away his biggest criticism.
So you've got Jalen Green and Kuminga, 2 G League guys, right? Kind of in that top 4, top 5. I think that's where most people have them. I don't think a lot of people have seen those guys play, obviously, because they didn't play in college. What type are those 2? High ceiling impact guys as well?
Yeah, Jalen Green is the best athlete in the class by a country mile. Like, it's all him. He is the most explosive player I've seen since Zion, excluding Zion probably in the last 5 years. But he can also shoot a little bit, can kind of play make. I worry about his lack of ball handling right now. Like, it's not that strong, which could reduce the impact of his explosiveness. Kuminga really just can't shoot. That's pretty much his issue right now, but it's not a broken shot. His form is actually pretty decent. It's just like, I can't even figure out what's wrong with it. I think he just needs more reps. Like, he's young, and guys don't, shooting comes along later. Chris Paul was a terrible shooter at the beginning of his career. So things change, but those are 2 guys who I think they both have top 2 return on value if they hit.
Well, and listen, people thought that LaMelo Ball couldn't shoot.
Right.
because they saw a little tape of his overseas play and thought that he was going to have a problem. To me, it's just shooting seems to be the toughest thing, other than just we can't evaluate sort of mental toughness. It's really tough to evaluate who's going to come in and just really excel psychologically. But I think right under that is shooting ability. I just think people get it wrong all the time.
Yeah, there's indicators out there, but finding the exception to the rule is the hardest thing. And I think a lot of that is going to workouts and things like that, events where you get to see these guys shoot in an open court, seeing what works, what doesn't work. Because there are guys who flat out just miss. Like that doesn't get talked about. You hear about the guy who, he hit 10 threes in a row or whatever, or he hit 30 threes in a row. 10 is probably not nearly impressive for an NBA player. But like if they hit like 30 threes in a row, you hear about that, but you never hear about the guy who misses 5, 10 in a row.
All right, we've already kept you too long, but I wanna do a couple more of these and then get you out of here. So in this scenario, the Hornets jump to 2. Toronto's at 1. I mean, what team would jump to number 1 that you would go, well, I don't know about Cade Cunningham here. Maybe Cade does drop to 2, and is there any team at this point that you feel like wouldn't take Cade?
No, we learned. I think we learned in 2018 that it doesn't matter who you have. Like the Kings really overthought it because they're like, oh, we have De'Aaron Fox, we don't need Luka. It's kind of the same thing. You can't.
I feel like Golden State last year overthought it with the Wiseman.
Maybe so. Yeah.
I mean, I would have taken LaMelo number 1, but I mean, Anthony Edwards is fine. But yeah, they completely overthought it. Like I just talent fits everywhere.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, it's got to be Mobley, right? The Hornets just gobble up
that
that center. Okay. So I just want to show everyone that I did work on this all morning. I did get the Hornets to number 1. It took me, my wrist hurts. Like I think I've developed carpal tunnel syndrome from just clicking the draft lottery simulator. They have a 1.8% chance of acquiring Cade Cunningham number 1 overall. The Hornets have only selected number 1 one time, and it was LJ, Larry Johnson, franchise changer. So if the Hornets get lucky again, it could happen. It could happen once more. Richard, really appreciate you spending some time with us. We'll try to get you in contact with 23andMe. Let's do some DNA testing because I really feel like you. I mean, think we need it. I feel like the Staymans and the Zellers. There's got to be some kind of. He's got to be like a third cousin twice removed or something. This is ridiculous.
Hey, I will not turn down an invitation to the Zeller family reunion. I will do my job. I'll report back. I'll get a mic. We'll do an episode with me just in there. You'll hear.
All right, don't commit to something like that with this show because we will make it happen. Don't you worry about it. Or at least we'll say we'll make it happen and then not do it. That's more kind of our style. Richard, we really appreciate you spending the time. We'll get you back on here once the Hornets know where they're going to be drafting, and we can talk a little bit more definitively about this.
Perfect. Appreciate you having me.
All right.
Thanks, Richard.
Again, Richard Stayman. You can check him out on the Locked On NBA Draft podcast. And Locked On's going to be doing some live coverage on July 29th on their Locked On NBA YouTube channel. We're not affiliated with Locked On in any way, but I do still work for them, so I love them, and I want you to love them too. And they
only in our roots. It's still in our DNA.
Yeah, we started there. I mean, we started on our own, but we really got going once Locked On picked us up. And the listeners definitely support this show, but also our day jobs support this show.
This is true.
They allow us to do the things we do. Okay, so we had to. I wanted to get Richard in early. But so we dispensed with any kind of pleasantries. David, how you doing?
I'm good, Doug. I was going to say next time I want to ask Richard what it's like to just cover Luka all the time. I imagine it's glorious, and it makes you feel like great. We have a superstar. We have a generational talent.
Okay, I'm going to say something, though, and this has to do, and I'm going to tie this back in with the Hornets, okay? Because I think a lot of Hornets fans right now are salivating, right? And we are too. We see LaMelo Ball's talent. We think, my God, where can this talent, once it grows, once it flourishes, where can it take us? And I think you're seeing the interesting thing in the NBA, which is that there really only are the once-in-a-generation talents that can lift an entire franchise without much help at all.
Right.
And I don't know if LaMelo's on that level. Maybe he is. Luka
Luka
I don't
is.
know if Luka's on that level
Oh,
because
yes,
you're
he
seeing
is.
Luka. Well, hold on. I'm just saying you're seeing Luka right now. They give him KP. KP doesn't play very well, but it's still a good talent, right? I mean, they put some pieces around him, and he cannot on his own. I was watching Locked On Mavs on YouTube, by the way. I was watching them the other day, and they were showing usage rates. And Luka Doncic had one of the highest usage rates this season and last season. It ranks at like the top. They ranked it
Yes.
both in the top 20 in usage rates. Okay, and you see where the Mavs get to on that, and that's no slight against Luka. All I'm saying is that to expect one player, as good as that player might be, as a superstar level as that player might be, to lift your franchise on their own is unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, you're okay. Luca is that guy, though. I mean, I think he's going to be the face
Prove
of
it.
this
Show it
league
to me.
moving forward. Well, he's going up against two superstars on the other end. You know, the other team has players too. When he's depending on the likes of Josh Richardson and even Tim Hardaway Jr. and throwing Porzingis, but I'm talking about guys that you never heard of trying to hit one key corner three, to seal the deal in the seventh game. He needs a little bit of help. He needs someone else who can create. He needs someone else who can get their own shot. He's still getting his own shot, and he's swarmed by Kawhi. So yeah, I mean, Luke is it for me. But if you're still a doubter, that's fine.
Okay, I'm not a doubter. You're not.
If you hate Luka, it's okay. Just get Richard back on.
You are not hearing what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I'm not sliding Luka Doncic. What I'm saying is he is not the level of superstar that can do what LeBron did. Look at LeBron. Remember LeBron's first championship team?
Yes.
He had nothing. He did not even have
Luka doesn't have anything. Okay, he's doing this despite Kristaps being basically taking up space. Boban was more impactful than Kristaps was towards the end of that series.
Because Boban is a treasure.
I know. He should be treasured as such as well. But anyway, we can have
and Tim Hardaway Jr. was fantastic.
Had a great series and then, couldn't hit anything in the seventh game. So, and Kawhi was a cyborg. It was kind of fun to see Cyborg Kawhi come back.
All I'm saying
obliterate people
is that even if LaMelo,
I'm with you, but I think Luka can. But I think that's where you need to stop trying to find the next Luka. When we're talking about these things, everyone's looking for that. Those generational players don't come along. I mean, look, Trae Young is great. He's got more help than Luka does.
And I'm not saying that I don't think Luka could do that. All I'm saying is that we would need to see something even more special this upcoming season from LaMelo Ball to convince me that he is the kind of player that could drag an entire franchise in his wake to an Eastern Conference Finals or a championship. There, as impressive as he was not, because he was a rookie, because there's veteran talent on this team, he was not the central focus of the team. Usage rate, just the amount that he had the ball in his hands. Once that happens, do we see even more special things out of him? That I think we'll start to get some of the answers to that question next season.
Let's hope so. I think it's got to come on the offensive end. I mean, it's got to be an impactful scorer, the way he can just create things just for himself. I mean, yes, he's going to make things easier for other people. That's his game, and you got to surround him with people. But to be that generational talent, I think you have to be able to, take a game over by yourself on the offense.
So how do you feel about the draft now that we've talked to Richard? Because we're going to bring, by the way, I love Richard. I was going to make a Tommy Boy Richard reference, but I just did. He looked too young. I just didn't feel like he would get it. He looked a little younger than both of us, and I'm a little younger than you. And I just didn't know.
You don't think he would have gotten that?
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't want to take the risk. I do have the, here we go. Yeah, I could have dropped that at some point and just sort of looked at his face and see how he felt about that, if he really got it. And then I could have dropped the Richard. But anyway, I'm getting way off track. How do you feel about the draft now that we've talked to Richard?
Well, I feel like there's talent in this one. I mean, I guess I did, but I just didn't watch enough of the college guys until the tournament, and then it's so hit and miss with seeing who those guys are and who the impact players will be. So I feel better about getting a good player. Obviously, I feel better if the Hornets could move up a little bit. I think if you're wanting to solve the center problem in this draft, it's not going to happen unless
they get lucky.
Yeah, so there's that one guy. I mean, that's the big takeaway for me when I was starting to go through these mock drafts. Is Mobley is the only guy, unless you want to talk about trading. But if you're talking about trading back from 11 and trying to solve your problems with center later in this draft, I mean, you're basically throwing this draft away, right? They need to keep adding guys. They need to keep adding impact players, and it sounds like some of those tantalizing guys, like you said, are going to be in that area, as they always are, Doug, as they always, flirt with where the Hornets are. And it's just, who are they going to pounce on? Who are they going to fall in love with in some of these workouts? But it feels like they're probably going to add some sort of additional wing guy, which honestly wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. They kind of need that.
Well, I hope they. I think you always just go best player available.
Right.
I just stopped myself there for a second because I almost said I hope they address some of the defensive concerns that this team obviously has. Even if it's not at the center position, I think they have defensive concerns all over the court, especially in that second guard position. But how do you really want to address that in a draft when you're going to, especially if you're in the 11 or 12 slot, when you don't really know what you're going to have in a player until 2 or 3 years down the line, and your team roster is going to be dramatically different. I just don't see a lot of players, based on that conversation with Richard and the little research that I've done, I just don't see a lot of players that I would feel confident could come in and supplant Terry Rozier or Devontae Graham in the starting unit. And so then you're talking about 2 or 3 years down the line, Terry might be gone, Devontae might be gone, and you've got to figure some stuff out there. So I think that's probably better addressed in free agency, which we'll talk about in the next show. Real quick, I just want to say I did create a Twitter account for the show. You can follow us on Twitter at LOL Hornets, LOL Hornets.
Nice.
What do you think about that handle?
I love that handle. I just saw it. I thought you were promoting Locked On Hornets, but I see what you did there, and it's very, very.
Oh, I didn't even realize I almost stepped on it. But I think they're at Locked On Hornets. So I think we're different enough. LOL Hornets. Yeah, we're doing it for the LOLs.
That's very good. That's very good. Hey, does Florida State, that just every year they have a new athletic freak they just turn out that plays the power forward position, right? That is so tantalizing that teams can't resist it. I mean, this Scotty Barnes, by the way, who Richard mentioned, it is that guy. I mean, he's super athletic. I do remember seeing him, but they keep producing those guys that fit in the NBA and are just like athletic freaks, and you're just not sure about how they're paying out, but they're always interesting.
I wanted to, before we get out of here, kind of just walk down memory lane a little bit. And just kind of go through some of the draft history. By the way, if the Hornets do land at the number 3 slot for the second year in a row, that would tie the record set by the 9th pick. The Hornets have picked 9th 4 times in the NBA draft. You'll remember that legendary Charlotte Hornets player, Kemba Walker, selected in the 9th slot. Noah Vonleh also selected in the 9th slot, so it hasn't always gone well. But the 3 pick would tie that one. They've picked LaMelo Ball, Baron Davis, and their other 3rd pick was Adam Morrison.
Adam Morrison, that was a good one. We'll dive more into this, I think, as the draft gets closer. But obviously, you want to look at Mitch's track record, which we've got a little. We've got some evidence on now going into this draft. I mean, you mentioned best player available. It really feels like that's what Mitch is building around. I mean, I think, you have to be able to trust him if you're a Hornets fan at this point, given what he's done in the drafts. I mean, look at all the draft picks he had out there playing on that team last year, making a big difference and an impact. So you got to trust that they'll find their guy. If they do slot in that 11th one, it'll be obviously a little bit trickier. But maybe Doug, maybe it's time they turn this lottery luck around. Maybe now that they've got their one, maybe the NBA will look favorably upon them, and they'll get some draft luck that like teams like the Pelicans always seem to get, and the Bulls, for crying out loud. I swear, you almost made me so mad with your mock lottery results when the Bulls were the first pick. I'm already worked up around all the lottery stuff, and I saw the Bulls get the first pick again. They jumped up there and got some fortune.
Yeah, that happened. What draft was that? That was the Emeka draft, right? No, that was Orlando jumped up and got Dwight, and then Emeka was 2. There was a draft, I feel like, when the Hornets landed in the lottery, and maybe it was this draft at 5th, and that's when the Bulls. It was a year around here that the Bulls jumped up. I think that was the Derrick Rose pick. I'm looking through this draft history, and I'm wondering, David, like if you just built a team out of the players that the Hornets have selected and let go of, so they traded them on draft night, how many games would that team win? So you would be highlighting with Kobe Bryant. I mean, that's going to be your primary scorer. That's going to be your superstar. But then you can surround him with Brennan Wright, who didn't hang around a very long time, but Tobias Harris. That was the deal that eventually landed the Hornets, or the then Bobcats, Bismack Biyombo. But they let go of Tobias, who is still doing good things in the NBA.
Took a while.
Dwight Powell has become an impact player, or at least a piece. I didn't see that coming, but he has become a piece.
So let's look at that. You got 2014 highlighted there. Let's look at that and think about what happened. Noah Vonleh, that we know what happened there, but it did yield Nick Batum. Shabazz Napier, of course, legendary as LeBron's favorite player. That pick was traded for.
That was PJ Hairston.
That's right, PJ
who I have
Hairston.
A signed hat from. He didn't sign
right.
it. I just bought it at like one of the, when they just at the end of the season they just like set stuff in the concourse and discount it way down. Picked up a PJ Hairston signed cap.
And you mentioned Dwight Powell there. So nothing from the 2014 draft remains. Nothing from the 2015 draft remains. I mean, those are a couple years
back.
It's all gone.
So it's all gone. Gerald Henderson.
But you know who does remain?
Well,
until this year, 2013, Cody Zeller. Now he's gone.
He's gone. He wants to be wanted, just like David Tepper. David Tepper, owner of the Carolina Panthers, wants a stadium to be wanted. Says
he wants you to want it as well, Doug, or me. Actually, me.
Yeah. Do you want it? Do you? I don't know. I haven't met anyone who wants a new stadium.
I read that quote as well, and he said, "I want the people of Charlotte to want it." And I was like, I don't think I want it.
Can you imagine Michael Jordan saying something like that, and the reaction to that? People would be like, "Boo! Get out of here!"
Just wants
Michael.
his money. Another billionaire who just likes his money.
Greedy Michael Jordan once again. Yeah, nobody. I mean, I think people are starting to say that about Tepper, but I think the reaction would be
That's
even more
billionaires, guys.
No, nobody wants it. That's Bank of America's fine. Like, what's wrong with Bank of America Stadium? They just renovated it. What are they talking about?
I mean, I've got some pointers on the concession layout, but yeah, it's fine. We don't need that.
Yeah, Cody Zeller's gone. Frank Kaminsky out of here. Malachi Richardson never here. But I think Kobe Bryant, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Dwight Powell, Shabazz Napier, and Tobias Harris. I think that team might get to the I think it gets to the second round. It just on the back of Kobe and Shai.
Yeah.
Man, Shai's turning into a good player. Imagine, okay, if we were to have this conversation now about the missed opportunity of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, imagine if we had that and Miles hadn't popped like he did this season.
Well, so that was I thought about that this week. I mean, are you sure, as it stands today, knowing what you saw from Miles, like you'd still want Shai at this point? You need to see one more season from Miles to jump in there? I mean,
so I think Shai still is in the lead, and I would say even in the lead significantly. But now Miles is in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was out of the game completely. Now he's in the game,
He was
And
an yeah.
I could see a reality in which Miles ends up having the better career. But the ball's going to be in Shea's hands a lot. He's on a bad team. That bad team could get good, and then all of a sudden, Shea. Even if that's the thing, if OKC gets good, Shea's going to be one of your highlight players. I'm not sure if the Hornets get really good, that Miles is like. I'm not sure that Miles is a second or
He
third
makes
piece.
highlights though. He is Mr. Highlight.
Yeah, you're right.
So
I don't know. I think it's an open question, and again, it wasn't very open before Miles started to pop.
he made it a conversation. And Shea was hurt. I mean, we should point that out, right? He was
Shea
hurt
was
towards the
hurt.
end of last
Miles
year.
already has the superstar in the making, on the roster, so that could give Miles, just a little bump up. So we'll have to see. But I think it's the question is a little less open, or a little more open, I should say, than it was.
Yeah, I think so too. Follow-up question. How long do you hold on to draft what ifs? So every time a player that the Hornets passed up, which is basically everyone in the playoffs, pops, it's like, well, the Hornets sure could have used that guy. And, we're talking about, I think the one now is like Michael Porter Jr., which I think is a special case because people weren't sure if he'd be able to walk.
Yeah, no.
And he dropped.
I don't blame the Hornets for that.
He dropped way down.
That's
and
a situation where
passed on him.
That's a situation in the draft where you celebrate the team that took the chance, but you don't really punish anyone that didn't take the chance. I say for me, I hold on to that grief until the player that was selected goes away. So, I mean, for me, I'm going to hold on to the Donovan Mitchell situation until Malik Monk is no longer a member of the Charlotte Hornets.
So soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, Frank Kaminsky's gone, so I don't really worry about like passing up on Miles Turner or Devin Booker.
Yeah, it certainly helps when they pass up on guys like I'm forgetting his name now. Justice
Winslow, yeah.
Right?
Well, that didn't turn into anything. I was never a big fan of Winslow to begin with. I don't know who I'm a fan of or not a big fan of. This I'm telling you, this conversation that we have with Richard is the very beginning of my understanding about what's going on in the draft, and I hope you found some information from Richard enlightening no matter where you are in your draft education process. I came away thinking like, okay, the Hornets could find a player, and I don't know that they need to draft for need. I like these names that he's bringing up, though, these defensive wings. I'm telling you, if the Hornets come away with a defensive wing, I won't be mad at it. And you can if you pick a player that's kind of around the projection, you can always make an argument that you're taking the best player. It's only when you make that massive reach. If at 11 or 12 they make a massive reach for a defensive center, then I think it's pretty clear they were drafting for a need.
They can't do that. I mean, I just don't think they can in this draft. I think you're wasting a pick there if they draft somebody at center, where they're slotted. So yeah, I think adding another exciting guy would also be, if you're building this team and trying to build on some of that momentum, adding a defensive guy who can get up and down, run the floor, catch some of those lobs, and then you figure out the offensive side, right? Like you think about like all those guys that the Raptors have added, like OG and some of their lengthy wing guys. I mean, I still think you got to keep adding those type of players that you can build around and develop, right? I mean, you're singing the praises of JB and the staff for development on a lot of these young guys, so you got to trust that as well.
Where in the heck is this guy, Arnoldus Kulboka? Somebody get the back of the milk carton flow. This guy's MIA, still overseas doing it up. I want him to be.
Wow.
I want him to be underseas. I want him to be in these seas.
My goodness, I've never heard of that guy.
You have. You remember the Kulboka draft because the picture came out with him in like a playground when he was like 12 years old with a Hornets starter jacket on, and everybody was like, "Ooh, cool."
Okay. Wow, look at that 19 draft there, Doug. PJ Washington, good pick. Cody Martin turned out to be a good pick. Jalen McDaniels in the second round as well. I mean, that's what you like to see. And maybe maybe we'll see a little bit of that out of Vernon Carey. I don't know about Grant Riller, but the two second-round picks from last
Grant
year.
has not had a chance. Let's give
true.
Grant a chance. But that's the thing that we're seeing out of the Mitch Kupchak era is that like he makes every pick count. You know, and every pick has gotten a great opportunity. Now, not every pick is going to turn out. I mean, that's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
But they've given these players great opportunities either in Greensboro, and they've gotten chances to shine for the organization. I think Vernon Carey still has an opportunity. I think they still have a piece on this roster right now that could help solve some of their defensive woes. So we'll see with that. On the next episode of This Is Not a Serious Hornets podcast, we are going to dive into free agency because I think that could be potentially where the Hornets could solve some of these issues. That way you don't have to worry about it in the draft. You can just draft the player that you think could make an impact at any position. I think that should be the ideal drafting scenario. And honestly, I just think that's where Mitch's head is at anyway. I just don't think he's a draft for need kind of guy.
No.
So anything else you want to get to quickly, David, before we head out?
No, I think this was a great draft primer. Now knowing the date of the draft, we can start working backwards from that and seeing what we need to do. But I'm encouraged. I'm like you. I think Richard from coming on and shining some light on some of these guys. I think you're right. The Hornets can, in fact, get a player. So the next big date is the Lotto. The
Lotto, a little over 13 days from now. Let's see what Tankathon says.
Boy.
It says 13 days, 9 hours,
9 hours,
36 minutes, 43 seconds, 42 seconds, 41 seconds, 40 seconds.
Come on, let's change it up. Stop giving these same old teams a shot at the lottery. No more Pelicans, okay? No, they've had enough shots. Shine the light on somebody else. It's time for the Hornets 11. To get a little luck.
Charlotte just jumped into 2. There you go. I just hit it again.
Boom. Save it.
Evan Mobley.
Detroit, get out of there.
Yeah, that would be. So, David, really quickly, prediction on who the Hornets send to represent them for this year's draft lottery.
Are they going to do that this year? They're coming out of COVID, going right back to in-person draft lottery?
Well, they might be. They will. They might be in glass cases. You know, we put them in phone booths.
You got to send LaMelo.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do.
You know who you have to send. You don't send LaMelo. You know you have to send
Cody Zeller.
Never lost. You got to send LeVar Ball.
That's the next.
What's LeVar Ball's middle name?
He needs to be Hornets ambassador.
Christopher.
You know,
wouldn't have thought it would be something. Another one. LeVar Christopher Ball, born October 23rd, 1967, co-founder and CEO of Big Baller Brand. That's who you send. Former Carolina Panther. He's got roots in this city.
You know how Drake is like whatever he is for the Raptors, ambassador. I think it's time next season, ambassador of the Charlotte Hornets.
Have we seen LeVar Ball in any kind of Hornets gear? We haven't seen. Have we seen a picture of that?
No, we haven't seen him.
It's good. It's a good thing, I think. But here's the thing. It was a good thing for his rookie year. You don't want anything messing with that, situation. But as LaMelo develops into the star that we all know he's going to become, I want to see it. I want to see LeVar. I want to see him shake some things up. I want to see the entertainment factor. That's why I watch sports. I watch sports to laugh. I watch sports to cheer. I watch sports to get a little upset sometimes, and LeVar can check all of those boxes for me.
I'll tell you what, if they can't get LeVar, if they can't get LaMelo, they should just get Kenan Thompson to go as LeVar Ball.
Or we send Richard Stayman as Cody Zeller. All right, thanks for joining us here on This Is Not a Serious Hornets podcast. We're back next week talking about free agency. If you've enjoyed this show and want to see it keep on trucking, then support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Hornets pod, and follow us on Twitter at LOL Hornets. For David, I'm Doug. Go Hornets. Go America. Let's swarm.